IQ stands for Institute and Innovation, where we ask one of our industry affiliates to come to campus and discuss a problem or an idea that's going on in industry and at the cutting edge of innovation. Today, we are very lucky to have Tushar Agrawal join us today. He's an AI engineer from IBM. He's actually an alumnus, so this is a very special occasion to have him back on campus with us today. He'll be giving his talk, and then we'll be answering questions at the end. Drop questions in the chat, or you can wait until the end. We have both a remote audience and an in-person audience today, so we'll be toggling between both for questions. Thank you so much, and welcome, Tushar.
Thank you. Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Tushar Agrawal, so I'm an alumnus of the Data Science Institute, and I graduated in 2022. So it's been 2 years. I've been working at IBM as an AI data scientist in the practice of trustworthy AI governance, and now as an AI engineer building solutions with large language models for a financial services use cases, financial industry use cases. So this is kind of an overview of the work that we have done with clients, right? This is not an education seminar where I'm going to talk to you about like how everything is done. I'm going to talk about some best practices for prompt engineering and such, but I'm not going to go that deep into the details of what RAG is, like what the cases for RAG is, like, or the technical depth of how to build an LLM solution. I'm going to talk about the use cases so that it stimulates your brain towards thinking on how you can utilize it towards working with industries or clients when you go into your work, and how you can leverage kind of this technology to drive an impact in other sectors as well, such as the social impact stream. So this is just to stimulate your brain towards that, and what is the latest and upcoming in utilizing this technology for building AI solutions. So that's what it's about. And I'm also going to give you a brief overview of AI governance and kind of what are the use cases in the space. I can talk more to it, and you can connect with me after the call as well. I'll have that in and make sure. So, thank you. So again, in the overview. Oh, sorry, I'm checking. The title of the talk is Transforming Industry with LLMs from Financial Insights to Social Good. The overview that I spoke about is going to be the introduction to foundation models, the model parameters, and WatsonX.ai prompt lab. Then we are going to talk through some prompt engineering best practices, some AI governance use cases. Then I'm going to dive deeper into a financial industry customer care use case and a demo in the IT help desk with IT help desk use case, and some references and work that we have done for social impact with GenAI as well, and then links and references for continued learning. And if there are any questions that come during the presentation as well, I can take some questions depending on the pace of how you're going, and so a second. Yes. So foundation models establish a new paradigm for AI capabilities. What this means is that with traditional AI models, we used to train each and every model for a specific task, right? And there was a lot of human supervised training. But with foundation models, you realize that there's massive multitasking model capability, and it's adaptable to with little or no training. So it's a pre-trained unsupervised learning kind of architecture or structure, wherein we have large language models and we prompt them or give them instructions towards performing specific tasks now. So there's summarization, conversational knowledge, content creation, and code creation. And the key advantages are that there are lower upfront costs, less labeling, there's faster deployment through fine-tuning and inferencing. There's equal or better accuracy in multiple use cases, and there's incremental revenue to better performance. So we're going to dive into how each of these capabilities or some of these capabilities come into the picture when we go into the industry use cases as well, and how they're combined with a solution with large language models later in the presentation. Moving ahead. So about tokens and model parameters. So what is the input that goes into a large language model is a token, which is kind of a collection of characters that has semantic meaning for a model. So like let's say a sentence of 10 words could be 15 to 20 tokens, and every model has an upper limit to the number of tokens in the input prompt. plus the number of tokens that are generated as an output from the model. So one use case that you've seen is when you've interacted with ChatGPT, right? You give an input and you have a limit on the number of input or context that you can give, and also the number of output that is generated from the large language model. And this is now increasing in size with newer and better large language models coming out. But if you have also large language models specific with a limited context or specific industry, those are smaller in size and they still have a restriction on the number of inputs that can be given in. And there are some model parameters that you can control to know how the model generates an output in response to your prompt. So it's generative, right? It's trying to predict to some extent the next word from a set of words that are there when it's trying to generate an output. So if you want to set, like, this is a part of the WatsonX prompt lab, right? So decoding is a parameter that you can adjust so that you can set it to greedy or sample, wherein if it's greedy, it selects the next token with the highest probability at each next step. And when it's sampled, it chooses a subset of tokens, and then one is chosen randomly. So it's more creative in the sense of choosing what is the next word that is output. I have a list of all the model parameters or the ones that are available on a platform that you can tune and what they mean. They are around 14 to 15, which I'll share with you again after the presentation. So you can go through it and understand more about how the model works and what effect does it have on the output when you tune these parameters. And then the repetition penalty controls the repetitive text. The higher the penalty, the less likely it is that the result will include the repetitive text. And for sampling decoding, more parameters are available to choose. So if you select a sample decoding structure, then there is temperature, top K and top P as well, which adjusts the variability and the creativeness of the output. So we have WatsonX.ai as a prompt lab in the product as well. So WatsonX is our platform for building solutions with large language models. It has three components: .ai, .data, and .governance. .ai is the solution or the component where you utilize the platform to like partners to utilize the LLMs that are a part of a platform, which could be, let's say, the Llama, Mixtral, or IBM Granite series, and you utilize it to form solutions or make solutions with large language models. Prompt lab, as highlighted in the image, is kind of an area where you can test your sample prompts. So what goes into a prompt? It is the instruction that is the task that you want to give it, right? Let's say write a short summary for meeting transcripts. Then there are some things called examples, and in industry terms, it's also known as short. So if there is one example, it's called one-shot training. If it's two, then it's two-shot, and if there are no examples, then it's zero-shot. And these examples basically give a outlook on how do you want the output to be formatted. If it was for summary, for instance, so you give a input and you would give a summary of how the output would look. Output summary would look, and then subsequently give more examples, and then one second, and then you have basically your final input to the model in the very bottom, which is the input that you give to be summarized, and then you generate to get an output summary for the input that you're giving. So as a part of the prompt, you have the instruction, the examples, and the actual input that you want to give to the model to get a result or an output. And then you get this as a result. This is different from different from fine tuning. This is prompt tuning, wherein you are changing the prompt of the model to get an intended result. Here, the weights of the LLM are not changed. In fine tuning, the weights of the LLM do change, so there is some retraining happening. And currently, our platform is also coming up with a capability. You can do so in open source models. But prompt tuning is basically when you alter the instruction or the number of examples. Like you can even give 100 examples here, and it still wouldn't relate to fine tuning, because in fine tuning you are kind of retraining the large language model towards a specific task. It is more computationally expensive to do. So that is a different task altogether. Here I'm just talking about prompt engineering and prompt tuning along with these instructions as I spoke. Right, there are the parameters that you can alter, and I have a document that I'll share with you after the presentation. So you can, like in the prompt lab with WatsonX, you can interact with various prompts for different tasks. So let's say you want to have summarization or classification scenarios or email generation scenarios. If there is time at the end of the presentation, I can show you a live demo for this as well, like how the prompt lab looks in WatsonX. And now we'll be moving on to accelerating responsible and transparent and explainable AI. So I think one thing that we intend to overlook, or like we have this in the back of the mind, that governance becomes a main part or a major part of AI solutions. But with more and more automation that is coming with AI, right? Like the talk of AI replacing jobs, or not jobs, but like taking over the software engineering space with like code generation and more automation that it's bringing, right? And like shaping the decisions that are out there. If we are building AI solutions to automate the tasks for us and do so in an intelligent manner and take decisions, then we have to ensure that our biases do not translate into the AI model. So hence, governance becomes a very important aspect in the whole AI space, right? And we are making our creating systems that are supposed to be better than us, not just automate the tasks. But if our biases translate, then in use cases such as recidivism, where AI models decide if a person who is let out early out of prison based on the probability of committing a crime again, right? Or even like classifying some transaction as fraud, or customer not approving a customer request, right? In all of these, if there are biases that translate from our inherent biases, then the systems cannot be better than us, or provide the value that we are intending to provide. So it is very important that we focus on the space of AI governance. I'll also share some resources and a book about trustworthy machine learning that you can reference. It's an online PDF written by a researcher in IBM research, and some areas that you can look into. This is just a brief overview of some of the use cases there. But I think before we look into these, what are the main pillars that go into AI governance? Some of them are fairness. How do you define fairness with respect to a use case, right? When you say fairness, it could be fairness with respect to a income group, a race, right? And different parameters. So you have to define definitions for what is fair, what is unfair, and configure the thresholds for that. And there is a lot of resources available to define those thresholds well as like fairness, compass, and such based on the use cases. Then the next part is explainability. If there is a model output that is there, if the customer requires explainability towards a decision that was made, like as it is and it is, right? Then the model should be explainable. It should not be like a black box, in the sense that it should be able to explain how the decision was made, or what was the sort of considerations it has, what was the weight it put to each of those considerations as it took a decision. Another could be drift, right? When the pandemic came in, there was a major economic shift in trends as well, right? So you want the model to adhere to macroeconomic changes, but at the same time detect if the performance drifts away from set thresholds as well. Like because when the models are deployed in production, the data is an incoming stream of data, right? So as the input data changes, right, when there are major changes, or if there could be like minor changes as well, depending on the industry and the use case. But as the input data changes in production, if a model is deployed, you need to be able to detect if the output is still the intended output, or is it like erroring or going away from the general trend that you would want to observe. So drift becomes a consideration. And then there is security, robustness, and all of these parameters and pillars as well. I'm not diving deeper into this because I wanted to be high level today and specific beyond the use cases. But these are some of the areas that you can read about and learn more about in the book that I share as well. And in following conversations, if you want to have it. So some of the use cases in governance are like enabling fairness evaluation of models used for hiring decisions. Let's say if someone is if AI model is used to hire people in a company, ensuring that those are fair, right, with respect to different parameters that could be used. Let's say from which school they belong to, the income group again, the nationality, age, race, and all of those parameters, and setting thresholds that it does not, or like gender as well. Setting thresholds for evaluating fairness. Providing risk management capabilities to access and mitigate significant regulatory or policy breaches. So as AI is becoming more prominent, there are a lot of regulations that are coming out as well. So the platform, WatsonX Governance, has capabilities to understand those regulations and kind of warn you or give you an alert to to the parameters or regulations which you're not adhering to, depending on the use case. So also keeping up with the regulations becomes a major task. And document modeling and decisions for lineage and explanations of HR decisions. So in organizations, when AI solution is put out, right, by the business team, they come up with a problem or a case that they want to solve. Let's say it could be to have like HR-based decisions. Let's say if an employee is retained or not, right, or if it's fired, or what is the compensation that they need to give out. So having an AI model for this use case, for instance. So then from the business team, this goes into the data science and development team where they build it, validate it in the feasibility stage, then the development stage, and finally the production and monitoring stage. And all throughout the process, you need a way to govern or see how the changes have been made to the model and document all the input that was given and the feedback that was given. So this also becomes a part of a governance, which is like model lifecycle management. As an AI model goes from an idea to actually feasibility testing, developing, and production, how do you track its lineage and the explanation for the output? And there are some customer care use cases as well. So ensuring agents deliver quality results, monitoring chat for red flags like toxicity, personal info, or off-topic conversation, and flag when responses are outside of social norms and summary are factually incorrect, or like to further reduce human intervention. And in business process, PPOs, right? So monitoring customer-specific process documents for personal identifiable information. So like you don't want if you are using customer-specific process documents, you don't want the PII data to be a part of the alerts, right? And then monitoring NLU text models for drift, relevancy, and more hands-off monitoring. And then supporting review activities across finance, HR, procurement, and groups. So again, this becomes a part of the governance of process organization across the whole organization. Moving on to the industry use case. This would be very interesting because this is a live industry use case that we did, and the client has adopted the use case. So what was the use case? So the client employees relied on manually searching the knowledge base of a global service desk documents or calling the support staff to resolve IT-related issues. This led to 3,000 tickets per week and 3,000 calls per week to the help desk agents, with the agents spending significant time sifting through documents themselves. So the stakeholders for this use case were the global service desk agents, the CTO, and these are the people who we interacted with for the POC that we did with the client. And then the solution that we proposed was a RAG-based solution with GenAI assistant interaction. And it leveraged three components, which is WatsonX.assistant, WatsonX.ai, and Watson Discovery. So assistant becomes the interface. AI is the AI large language model that is used and the platform for interacting with it. And Discovery becomes the storage of documents and ingesting it in a smart manner. And what made it a success was that we were able to successfully deploy a RAG pattern. RAG is retrieval augmented generation. It has two components, which is the search and replying. So search or retrieval, it means that you basically query the documents to find out the most relevant chunk or on context that is there. So let's say if we have IT help desk documents, which is a use case, then going through those hundreds of documents and finding out the document which is most relevant to the question that the customer asked, as well as finding out which piece of information is the most relevant within the document. And then that is retrieval. And then augmented generation is basically using that context or multiple contexts that will retrieve to generate an appropriate answer to the customer query. So that is the RAG pattern. And how it was a success is that it led to an estimated 40% reduction in global desk operation costs and empowering and efficiency. So kind of like having 24/7 information access to accurate responses within GenAI and streamlined compliance because it ensures governance and adherence to policies. So before we move on into the details of this, a similar example that could be in a university setting is that we also use ChatGPT for answers and questions that we face issues with. If you want details, right? I mean, we do have CAs now, but since this came out, and since we have this technology so accessible, if we have any questions or concerns, we do still reach out to ChatGPT, right, for answers. So a way or a thing to develop as a project could be that you could have build a system with a personal TA kind of a system for the university. This could be a project idea. Basically, it would query the information that is there, that is all the lecture slides that we have. Let's say if we take a course, natural language processing, right? All the query slides that we have and the homework that we have and the frequently asked questions, and give an answer back to the student. This would kind of, you can build it upon the OpenAI infrastructure using the set of APIs, right? And what could be done more is you could install a feedback system. So whenever the students ask a question, right, and if the answer, the LLMs tend to hallucinate, right? So we'll come to how we deal with it in this use case as well. But you could have a feedback system wherein if the answer is not correct, the student can give a feedback that the answer is not correct, or the teachers can actually vouch for these answers as well that we have already in the portals as well, right? Like with a thumbs up that the generated answer is correct. So it was a parallel to this is that how it was a parallel is that it's again retrieval augmented generation, which is like question and answering to a knowledge base, and it would be available 24/7. So TAs have specific hours, or like instructors have specific hours where they are available. This would be much more like this will be available 24/7 and even accessible to students as well for knowledge gaining and sharing. Yeah.
So how is the feedback system work? Suppose the model is doing well and supposing up lots of stuff. What, like, do you sort of go and fine tune it, or what do you change?
Yes, you would. I mean, there's multiple things that you can change. So depending on the person who's maintaining the system, you can engineer the prompt to get better answers, right? You can give more specific examples. Let's say if it's not able to answer code generation questions specifically or identify issues in SQL queries, so you might break it down further in subtasks and give more examples for it to learn from, or use a different large language model, right? For the whole system, or this is a solution that you're trying to build, right? So you would look back into the feedback and see where are the issues actually, and then try to solve for them.
So the feedback system would be the feedback to a human about the model, not to the model directly.
Feedback system would be a feedback
To the human, to the person who built the system.
Correct. I mean, you collect that, like that. I'm saying it as an interface. So when you're getting answers from ChatGPT, if you can have a thumbs up or thumbs down, right? To say, or like more feedback to what is wrong in it and what is expected. Of course, someone has to alter it. I mean, there's a concept of AI agents also, where two agents can talk to AI. There could be the administrator or the person maintaining could also be an AI bot, and they could have a conversation among them. But that is something that we are not going towards now. So assuming it's still human maintaining the system at the moment, the interaction would be as such. So that was a bit of a parallel as to how you can use a similar kind of a use case or a system towards a university, and replacing or helping out, augmenting TA's work that is there in the university. And now diving back or coming back to this, which is the IT helpdesk use case, as I was speaking about it. So we are trying to reduce the number of tickets and calls per week to the agents, and ensure that they can handle more cases, or there is more availability for people who want to ask questions to the system. Let's say if their laptop is lost or their phone is, for a big firm like a multinational payment integration firm that we are doing it for their employees. So the proof of architecture outcomes that we had with them were intuitive support. So it should be conversational driven. Like if there is a question that you don't understand as the assistant, then there should be some sort of question clarification and qualification, and then it should be readable results with actionable steps, custom user flows, and rephrasing the user input or phrase for a better question that goes to the LLM as well. Leveraging the document that is there, so not answering outside the document, linking answers to the relevant source. So let's say if a person wants to read more about it, so there could also be a link to the original source where the answer was generated from, and customized document processing, including splitting and summarization for contextualization of content. And then it should be an integrated process. Let's say if the assistant was not able to resolve my query, I should be able to connect to the live agent, speak to them, how to make that experience better, right? Is something that I'm going to be talking about. And also create a ticket or like an automated ticket generation from the summarization of the conversation and how large language models are used there. So this is kind of the architecture where we use the IT support documents, had them in a service known as Watson Discovery Service, deployed a custom application on Code Engine, basically an application for us to run and interact with the service, and which contains the calls to the WatsonX.ai platform as well. And then Watson Assistant as a front-end interface for the users to interact with. I'm gonna show the demo so it will be more clear. And yeah, I can just go through the demo actually. These are some of the personas that we handle it for, which is like people who have a simple issue but need more guidance to their solution. So having clarifying questions when a question is asked, right? Do you want to, do you mean this, or this is what your intention? And the value for it, which is to help understand or clear the conversation when a user is asking something, and give a link to the source if the user wants to learn more about where the information is coming from or read more in relevance to it. Then for people who prefer more hands-on guidance, having step-by-step guidance instead of all of the instructions coming together so that they can click on next. I'm gonna go through the demo for it as well. And then ticketing integration, as I was saying, if there's an issue that cannot be solved by live agent or the live agent is not available, then generating a ticket, and how you can use LLMs to summarize the context for the same. And then finally, for users which have a lot of question and require agent help, like at the very time, knowledge-based structuring, which is processing the documents into sections with context to draw from the right articles. This is something that happens in the back. Contextual awareness, which is the ability to ask follow-up questions, as you mentioned, with the conversational history, and summarization for hands-on. So let's go to the demo. So the personas that we spoke about, right? And let's say if a person asks a question such as, help me reset my password. Internal IT help desk, right? So you ask IT related queries, like if something is broken or resetting a password or something as such. So it gives the options. Basically, you can have within the assistant as a part of the experience, you can have the options if your question is related to multiple domains. So here the person selected thesis as the domain which they wanted to resolve the issue for, and it got the instructions along step-by-step instructions along with the link to the original document where they can read more about it. Right, and if there is another question such as I lost my laptop, then there's an option to select between step-by-step instructions and all the instructions together. Previously, it was all the instructions together, just in the separate bulleted points, but now it's step-by-step, where at any step you can choose to call support or click on next if you're done with the step. So this is also an experience that you can build out within the assistant. Then moving on, for users which are kind of unsure of the question that, like if they would want to dive deeper, right? So let's say the first person asks, how do I resolve my VPN issues? And they got a response, but now they want to ask a follow-up question about how to update it. So here, the context is being preserved in the sense that the first question was about resolving VPN issues, and the following question is about how do I update it, where it is being identified as talking about the same set of VPN issues. So you can have contextual awareness in the interface that you build as well, right? And get the following response as well, along with the source document. And here is something interesting is that when you call support, this is just an example of how the session history looks. But when you call support or go to a live agent, even when you interact with Uber Eats or such applications, usually they ask you to reiterate the issue or describe your issue in brief again. Here we built a capability wherein it generates a summary based on the conversation history that is already there as a part of the conversation. So the user does not have to summarize it manually. The large language model can summarize it, which is a separate LLM call, right, to summarize the conversational history and have it handed over for a smooth handoff. And then finally, I need to request a new device is a question or input by the user, right? And we also built in guardrails. So this is something that I wanted to talk about, is that if there is less confidence in the response, how do you build the guardrails or give a warning with the response that I have low confidence, please refer to the source document, for instance. And if the confidence is very low, then not give a response altogether. Is there anyone who has a clue about how do we evaluate a RAG pattern, for instance? Any approach that we could take to evaluate a RAG pattern? Go ahead.
I was thinking you kept track of all of your of all the training data / tokens, and you could just mark what percentage of it is used to generate that response.
Okay. Makes sense. It's kind of like, what is the context for generating the response? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah.
Yeah, that is one way, that is one component of evaluating it.
If it's RAG, then if you're using cuisine similarity, whatever the distance measure, if it's very low, below a certain threshold, you say you don't confident about your response.
But what is the cosine similarity between?
Between the prompt that you're sending and the document that's retrieved.
Okay, so you both said correct answers, and those are two components that go into evaluating RAG. This is kind of like a basic architecture. Go ahead.
Something similar to what they said, but what we were talking about earlier, which is the feedback mechanism. If we're collecting feedback, then we'll also have the data on what is the response that we gave to the previous question and what was the percentage that we got thumbs up or thumbs down on.
Agreed. So your answer is also correct. So all three of the answers went into evaluating the solution. What you said about evaluating or giving feedback goes to the point of evaluating the solution as a whole. When the RAG process is already happening, right? We are discussing the evaluation for the part where you're giving the question and you're getting a response. So feedback mechanism comes after you get the response. So that is also something that I'm going to talk about, like how do you have analytics built around it on the question. But to combine both of your approaches, for RAG again, it's broken down into two processes, which are retrieval and generation, right? So the first component is the retrieval based on the question and the instruction prompt that was given, right? How relevant is the context chunk to the context that was retrieved? Because you retrieve chunks or context from the set of documents or your knowledge base. So how relevant is the context chunk, or how similar is it to the question and the prompt, right? The whole prompt with the context. So how similar is that? The similarity score between those two. And then there's another similarity score for generation. So how similar is the generated output to the context that was retrieved? So that is the evaluating the generation component. So to evaluating both the components, the retrieval component and how similar is the retrieved chunk to the question, and then the generation component, which is how similar is the generated output to the context chunk that was retrieved. So those are the two components that went in evaluating it, and based on adjusting the thresholds and confidence, which we had to look at based on the responses, we gave a warning if the confidence was low, and if it was very low, below a set threshold, then we didn't give a response altogether, and just gave a link to the source document if the retrieval threshold was high. So you can adjust what is the sort of output that you want to give based on the confidence and thresholds. And moving ahead into the kind of analytics capability that you said before that, data integration. So you can also integrate external processes such as creating a ticket and sending an email automatically. And again, the overall conversation is summarized and the ticket is created and the email is sent on the day. And going back into the analytics component that I was speaking about, that you mentioned, right? So for optimization and analytics, this is how you kind of, in addition to getting user feedback with a thumbs up and thumbs down, there are also a lot of analytics services built out which analyze the interaction with the large language model. So that is one way to get feedback, but that is after the response is generated to better your model and the whole approach, right? And other things that you can capture is the number of unique users, conversations, and requests that were going into the LLM. What that means is that the unique users are the number of users who interacted with the platform, which is an assistant platform. The conversations are basically the conversations which are back and forth conversations that happen, and the requests are one-off requests which were sent out to get a response. Basically, each request is kind of like a question to the LLM. A conversation can have multiple such requests. So those are kind of some of the parameters that are tracked within the assistant. Okay, one more thing that I wanted to highlight is there is a capability to look into the most frequent and least frequent actions. So in assistant, these are action terms, but basically the questions that were asked. What that would help with is that when you're building a system, right, LLM calls are expensive. So you don't want each and every question to go to a large language model. So if you see some questions being very frequently asked by the users to the model, then you would want to kind of build, if it's a document that is updated less frequently, handle those questions upfront so that you reduce the cost of your overall solution as well when you're trying to build a solution that grows with time, right? So kind of handling those requests upfront as well is something that you can do. Kind of analyzing which questions are most frequently asked and kind of building an FAQ board or answering those questions upfront within the analytics Watson assistant itself, not going to a LLM for a question and answer. And again, if you're going to the conversational log to see where did the LLM go wrong, or where did they complete, where did they receive a good answer. And these are some of the future use cases that can happen in the space of HR and app modernization and like IT help desk related use cases. So I don't want to go through all of these in the interest of time. So yeah, before I move on to the next section, which would be the last section, and then some resources, any questions? I'll carry on. Some of the use cases, I'll do a very high level overview of it, is with a partner, with two non-profits. We work with, we have an initiative called AI for Social Good, Data and AI for Social Good within IBM, and we work with non-profits every 3 months. So focus on a theme. So this one is working with non-profits on the theme of hunger, poverty, and homelessness. So Several is an organization that helps connect young children or students to voluntary services, right? So they were one of the non-profits that participated within our workshop. And basically the thing that they wanted to build out is that they had a founder who had a lot of knowledge and a document base, but since they have a lot of volunteers as a part of the organization, it's very tough to kind of manage the knowledge and reply to or answer queries or concerns that come up when you're trying to connect the volunteers to organizations, right? So kind of building an interface for them to be able to ask questions based on, again, the knowledge and documentation that already exists, right? And there are also kids of various ages who come to the platform and have questions. So within LLM, you can also have prompts such as answer or explain it so that's simpler to a 5-year-old, or answer so that's simpler or more mature for a 16-year-old. So you can have that kind of language as a part of the prompt as well, where you're replying to them. So that was one part of the solution, that you have AI-empowered chatbots, large language model empowered chatbots, to help volunteers, donors, and partners quickly help questions. That will help them along their specific journey and based on their specific kind of interaction and age or the input that they have, like the user group that is addressing or asking questions. Then for people who want to build curriculum, right? Let's say if you have a curriculum already built out for a certain age group, and if you want to adopt it to another age group, you can quickly do that as well to content generation. Again, another interactive assistant for the administrative capabilities within the organization. So even the people who are managing the organizations in non-profits usually are not there for a very long period of time. They are there for maybe a commitment of 3 to 4 years. So as there's a churn of employees, again, there is one founder who is managing the organization. So they go to her for any questions about what the organization's mission, again, and like if you have to give an advertising advert out, what should I put? So again, building a interface for them to navigate or ask questions within the knowledge base within the organization. So this is kind of the architecture about it. But let's say if there was a question about with their organization, right? What is their self-awareness concept of social emotional learning, which is a question relevant to their organization. You get a response along with this. This is kind of another use case that you can help with LLMs, kind of based on the RAG pattern as well. And then this is another organization which is Open and Atlanta. So with the 35th year this year, they have distributed 35 million meals to those in need, again based in Atlanta. So with them, they have, this is their mission statement, which is they cook, they deliver, teach, and they care. And the current state of their organization is that they have a large volume of incoming calls and limited staff capacity and limited knowledge with the new staff. Again, the same similar kind of issue. So this is an opportunity that they wrote. This is like we work with them to help them build an AI solution or understand how an AI solution would help with their organization, and they can build it with anyone. They don't need to rely on IBM. So this is an opportunity statement that they wrote about what they want to improve. How would they know if they're successful? Defining a success criteria. Who would be impacted? And how would it be great? And then kind of this was the objective of the MVP that we are doing with them, and the capabilities that we use. And kind of the architecture of what would happen is we would again have services such as text-to-speech and speech-to-text to handle incoming calls and the queries that are asked by customers generally, because they have too many queries coming in. Since everyone wants to donate or scale or direct them to the correct helpline, kind of like the AI assistant bot that we interact with during our banking services, but they don't have such a capability within their services. So kind of building that out for them, recognizing the speech, the words there, and handling the request or directing them to the correct lines or pages without the need for human intervention. So yeah, that kind of summarizes it all. These are some links and references for continued learning for generative AI. Here are a couple of blogs, and I'll share a document explaining prompt engineering practices. And then for responsible AI, again, bringing the light back to black boxes about explainability and 3 key reasons why an organization might need responsible AI. Again, I'll say that responsible AI is a very, very growing field. It is required across all of the AI solutions that are out there, right? They need to be better than us and not have our biases translated into their own systems, and be explainable as well as they are automating decision making. And a link to the book as well by Tushar. And there's the IBM Technologies YouTube series, something that's relevant to the talk that we had today, our use cases in banking. And they also talk about new use cases in generative AI space. And then if you'd like to connect with me, I'm available on LinkedIn and email as well. So thank you so much. This concludes the talk.
A tremendous amount of information. We're so excited. Yes, this is amazing. We're excited to have you back, and we hope that you'll come back in the future. That we'll definitely have all this information provided to our students. Does anybody have a question? We have like a few minutes. We have a question right here, and then you can online audience.
Yes.
Wonderful.
You put on the analytics board, right? Now, is that analytics board on the customer side or IBM side?
So the question is about the analytics board that I showed. Yes, analytics, right? And is this on the customer side or the IBM side? So this is available to the customers. When I say the customers, if we have the IT help desk use case, there are people who are managing the system and there are people who are interacting with the system. So people who are managing the system, they'll have access to the analytics component.
Now, suppose you see that it might not be doing as well as they would expect. They might not have the knowledge to go and play around with the model or fix the prompts, right? Or are they expected to have that knowledge, or does IBM do that?
No. This is a solution that goes to them. I mean, we have services to help them, to guide them as well, but based on the analytics and results, they can either tune the LLM or we can guide them through.
So they have to take care of the model once it's delivered to them and they...
Correct. Once the solution is built out, they'll maintain the solution. Depends on what the term is and contracting. This goes with any solution, if it's a traditional AI model, if the data changes, if it's not performing well, either they have the experts in-house or they can consult us first.
And one more thing, you mentioned explainable AI, but typically the biggest reason for not using neural networks and LLMs in the industry for a lot of use cases is because there's no interpretability, there's explainability. Like people using things like freeze maybe where there's explainability. So what does explainable AI mean for LLMs? Has that field evolved, or is it still like a big black box?
I haven't used, so the question is what does explainable AI mean for LLMs versus traditional AI when we have decision-based models, right? We're still exploring this in the space of LLMs with respect to explainability. The use cases that I've worked on are with traditional AI and decision trees and explainability there. But with respect to LLMs, I think one form or one alternative to explainability is, let's say, as you're providing the source document from which the answer is generated, right? Like a data provenance kind of a thing where the answer or what is we are retrieving from, or giving the chunks or storing the chunks from which answer or output is generated, right? And maybe providing the data that the model was used to train on. Like the source data for the LLM could be a component or work towards explainability. Now, how that would be in a use case and in a relevance is something that I still have to explore personally. But definitely that it becomes of relevance again because it is affecting human lives and decisions, right? So if you want to know why such a thing happened, and there would also be regulations around right to know and such. So it would be a long way there.
And we are at time, but Tushar's gonna be here to be able to speak and connect with everybody. It's wonderful to have her on my back. Also, that to see data for good out there in the world, you still applying that and carrying that mission onward in your professional life. That's wonderful to see. And thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to have you back very soon.
Thank you.
Everybody help yourselves to snacks, waters, food, everything. You're welcome. I have to step out. I have a meeting.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful.